a responsibility to the people of the whole world who are affected by our decisions and to the next generation of humanity.
John F. Kennedy, the second oldest of 9 children, was born in Brookline, Massachusetts on May 29, 1917. His father hoped that one of his children would one day become president. As a child, Kennedy had many childhood illnesses and once almost died from scarlet fever. But he grew up to be athletic and competitive, playing football for Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He injured his spine in college and never fully recovered from the injury. In 1943, a Japanese warship destroyed a boat Kennedy commanded while serving in the US Navy during World War II. Kennedy swam with the serving crew members to safety several miles away, carrying one injured sailor by pulling the man's life jacket strap by his teeth. When asked later how he became a hero, Kennedy replied, "It was easy. They sank my boat." Now a decorated World War II officer, Kennedy took up his father's presidential hopes after his older brother, Joseph, died in combat. Before being elected president, Kennedy represented Massachusetts in the House of Representatives and in the US Senate. He married Jacqueline Bouvier in 1953, soon after he became a senator. In 1960, he was elected president of the United States by the narrowest popular voting margin in history, becoming the youngest person and the only Catholic to ever be elected president. The Cold War, a period of tensions mostly between the United States and the former Soviet Union, now called Russia, dominated much of Kennedy's presidency. First, the US government secretly tried to overthrow the island of Cuba's new leader and Soviet Union ally Fidel Castro in a failed mission known as the Bay of Pigs. Then the Soviet Union built a wall in Germany, dividing East Berlin, which was under control of Communist Soviet Union, and West Berlin, which was supported by the Democratic West. This angered Germans on both sides of the wall and citizens of nearby countries. Kennedy visited West Berlin and vowed US support to the people there, stating, "Ich bin ein Berliner," or "I am a Berliner" in German. Cold War tensions cooled off in 1963 after the two nations signed a treaty, but the conflict would last until around 1990. Another issue Kennedy dealt with during his presidency was civil rights, or the idea that all US citizens should have the same basic rights regardless of the color of their skin and their religion. Kennedy wanted to pass more laws that would guarantee equal rights for all citizens. Before Kennedy became president, the Supreme Court passed a ruling in the case of Brown versus Board of Education that schools had to desegregate, or allow white and black children to attend the same school. Kennedy publicly supported the ruling and even sent military troops to the southern states to make sure African American kids were getting safely to school. Richard Nixon was not the first president to record his private White House conversations. In the summer of 1962, Kennedy secretly installed a taping system in the Oval Office and Cabinet Room that transmitted recordings to a reel-to-reel tape recorder in the White House basement. The president likely installed the system to aid him in writing his future memoir, and it captured many historical discussions between Kennedy and his staff, including discussions during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Near the end of Kennedy's time in office in 1963, more than 200,000 people took part in a march on Washington during the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation speech. Civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during the gathering. Kennedy authored his first book, When England Slept, at age 22. And in 1945, he spent a few months as a newspaper correspondent for William Randolph Hearst newspapers covering the United Nations Conference in San Francisco and the aftermath of World War II in Europe. In 1957, a Pulitzer Prize in biography was awarded to Kennedy for Profiles in Courage, although there has since been controversy as to how much of the book was ghostwritten by his aide, Theodore Sorensen. Kennedy had only been president for a little less than 3 years when he was assassinated on November 22, 1963, while touring Dallas, Texas in a presidential motorcade. Gunman Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with the death but was killed himself before he could be put on trial. More than 100 nations sent representatives to Kennedy's funeral in Washington, D.C. Although he was only president for a short time, his calls for peace, justice, and national service. JFK famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country," when he first became president in 1961. Inspired action among countless citizens during his lifetime and continue to influence others today.